Or
I was going to follow on some of that.
yeah,
Different
slightly topic. Okay, we'll go ahead, and then I'll pivot
I
back.
wanted to follow on some of Saeed's line
Yeah.
of questioning, because I mean, just big picture, humanitarian aid is still at a trickle. You yourself have called that insufficient since at least October. Civilian casualties continue unabated. The destruction of civilian infrastructure continues unabated. So is it time for this administration to admit that the rhetoric, however direct and candid and oft repeated as it is, isn't having a material effect on Israeli behavior when it comes to this conflict? Is it time to reach for tools other than rhetoric, declaring a moral and strategic imperative that the Israelis are clearly not abiding by?
I would wholeheartedly disagree with that assessment. On January 24th, 210 trucks with food, medicine, and other supplies entered the Gaza Strip.
Would you call that
As of
sufficient?
January 24th, more than 9,000 trucks with humanitarian aid have entered Gaza since October 21st. That is excluding fuel deliveries. That is certainly not sufficient. It is not enough. The people of Gaza need more, but I feel very confident in saying that were it not for direct engagement from this Secretary of State, from this government, from this president, from this making the delivery of humanitarian aid a priority, that number would have been far less. And so there is a real direct, tangible impact and real life consequence to the work that we are doing, to the engagements that we are having in the region with the government of Israel and others to push these priorities forward.
But there's not been a meaningful increase in the number of trucks or in the flow of aid that's been getting in since October.
This is a process that we will continue to work towards.
For how long?
It is as long as this conflict is happening, the delivery of humanitarian aid and doing so at a greater rate, at a higher clip, and increasing how much is going into Gaza will continue to be a priority.
Well, what about on the other issues, on the civilian infrastructure, the civilian casualties? Does it not feel to the U.S. like it is pushing on a closed door when it comes to rhetoric that it's employing?
We have been direct in our conversations with the government of Israel when we have seen instances of actions that we believe are contradictory to the principles that we believe the region should be abiding by, or are contradictory to the very clear principles the Secretary laid out in Tokyo in the fall, specifically when we see things like efforts around a buffer zone, or when we see efforts around the destruction of civilian infrastructure. We have raised those things publicly from up here, but we also have raised those privately in the around-the-clock active conversations that we continue to have with our Israeli interlocutors, and we'll continue to do so.
Let me ask it this way. Is the U.S. considering anything other than conversation as a tool to affect change in Israel's behavior in this conflict?
I have no new policy or new assessment to offer, but we'll continue to have our conversations with the Israeli government, and we'll continue to work at this.
Okay. May I ask on hostages? There
Sure.
are reports now that a similar group that has met in the past is reconvening to discuss a potential new framework for a hostage release. Is there anything you can offer on that front?
I don't have any updates to offer on that line of work, Olivia. It continues to be a priority for us, and we'll continue to work at it in close coordination across the interagency as well as with our partners in Israel. But I have no updates to offer
Okay.
on that.
Does the U.S.
Michelle.
believe that that Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments with regard to the Qataris' involvement in hostage negotiations set those efforts back?
I don't have any assessment to offer on those comments or some of the audio that's been circulating. What I can just say, and I spoke a little bit about this yesterday, is that Qatar has been an integral, irreplaceable, key regional partner, not just as it relates to this current ongoing conflict, but other priorities that the United States has had in the region, and we'll look forward to continuing to deepen our partnership with them and work with them on a number of key issues.
I have one on Iran, but glad to
Okay, yeah,
defer
well,
to
I'll
others on
come back to you. Anything else on this before? Yours is slightly off topic, right, Michelle?
Yeah, I want to ask about Iraq.
Okay,
and Syria.
I'll come back to you. Ryan, you've had your hand up. Go ahead.
Sure. I want to go back to the ICJ question.
Yeah.
Setting aside opining on how the preliminary verdict might come out, would the U.S. at least commit to not vetoing enforcement of whatever the court rules, one way or the other?
I'm not going to commit to any action from up here. That's
But to
not
pick
how
up on
the
Matt's
policy
question from
works.
earlier, doesn't that undermine the U.S. insistence that other countries ought to follow these court rulings? what does it leave of the kind of rules-based order if countries can pick and choose decisions?
That's certainly not what I was indicating. Again, I think we need to take a step back here because a decision has not come down, and no one here knows, unless you can tell the future, what exactly that will be. I'm not going to commit any U.S. government action from up here within the auspices of any body. What I can say is that we believe that the allegations that started this process, that Israel is committing genocide, we believe those to be unfounded. Simultaneously, though, we'll continue to raise with our Israeli partners the moral and strategic imperative that they need to take additional steps to minimize deaths on civilians. But I'm not going to get into this process beyond that.
Last one. At the same time, there were images this week of Israeli protesters blocking aid coming in to Gaza. To get that far into a military zone, there must be some kind of coordination with the military there. Did the U.S. raise with its Israeli partners this question of Israeli civilians protesting and blocking aid getting into Gaza?
I'm not aware of the specifics of those imageries, but what I will just say broadly, both as it relates to Rafah or Kerem Shalom, these are not crossings that the United States, they're not our crossings, but we continue to be in close coordination with the government of Israel, with the government of Egypt, and other interlocutors on the appropriate entry of humanitarian aid, as well as the safe departure of nationals who have a desire to leave Gaza. I've no doubt that had anything sort of propped up that made that delivery more laborious or more time intensive, that we are having those conversations directly, but I just don't have the specifics around that specific situation.